What I know is the following. All the attention, all of it, is going here. What that means is distribution has been commoditized. No longer do you have to pay for distribution if you can produce the content that is effective. It's smart to pay for distribution on these platforms, but you don't have to. It can happen organic. You can get there, and you could spend some of your money building it. What also happens is your end consumer starts latching onto you at a higher level than just the transaction that you're trying to do with them. And for anybody in this room, and I did my homework before I came to do this talk, anybody in this room who isn't trying to triple down, 10x down on being in the service business above and beyond after the first transaction is just not running as smart a business as they can. That is where all the economics are in what you do for a living. And if you can actually use the pool or spa as the gateway drug to services around the entire house, let alone those 2 units, that's when you start getting into the economics that change you from being a 7-figure business into an 8-figure business. And very honestly, by the way, I just want everybody to understand one thing that's very important to me. Everything that I talk about is hard. Everything that I talk about takes a crap load of work. Everything I talk about takes away from you watching entire seasons of House of Cards. So if you sit in this room and you've put in your 30 years and you're happy with how much money's in the bank and you're feeling good and you're a little tired, you don't have to listen to me. But if you want more, this is offense. If you want more, this is offense. And I promise you, here's the part that really makes me ponder. Right now, it's offense. In 2022, it's going to be defense. How many people here are retiring in the next 5 years? And I don't mean you're gonna crush it and retire and buy a boat. I mean you're old and you're finished. Raise your hands high. Respect. All right? So for the 4 of you old dudes, respect, go fish. For the 99.8% of the rest of this room, everything I'm talking about right now, if you have the audacity to own your own business and live the life that entrepreneurship and owning your own business allows you, and you do not put in the hours over the next half decade to educate yourself, I do not want anybody running out of this talk saying, wait a minute, he's right. I'm gonna let our 23-year-old niece now do her thing. This is not you're outsourcing it to that young buck. And I know that's why some of you laughed. You're like, yeah, Nancy's gonna, no, not Nancy. You, John, you're gonna do it. If you own your business in this room, you need to spend 50 to 100 hours on the internet reading or watching videos or listening. I don't know how you learn, but you need to understand where your end consumer's attention is because you're not gonna be able to reach them. And word of the mouth, listen, guys, one more time. Think about this. This is so good. I've actually never said this publicly. It just literally came in my head. You know how we're talking about social norms? You know how you're talking about how upset you are? You know, one of my favorite debates of parents right now is they say that their children don't know how to act social. They've decided, parents in this room have decided that their children are socially awkward because they only live in the phone. They've decided that the way humans communicate is only defined by looking somebody in the eye and using their mouth. They have been romantic in this room about the platform that one communicates through instead of actually communicating. Every child, 8 to 12 to 17 in America right now is dramatically more social than you. Because when you were 12 and none of your friends were around and it was 4:30 on a Tuesday, you went outside and threw a ball against the wall. You interacted with a tire wrapped to a tree. So you may not like the way they communicate, but I promise you, they're the most social that we've ever seen. They're just using a device and a platform that we didn't have access to. Some of you begged to have your own phone line in your room so you could be on the phone with your girlfriend for 7 hours watching 90210. Yes, I don't know how social that was, but here's what I know. I know that the thing that you're complaining about is going to hurt your business because as we continue to communicate that way, the way we recommend products and service will continue to happen that way. when 29-year-old Sally, who's 17 or 19 or 21 right now, is only talking to her friends when they first buy their home, or 41-year-old Sally. You know, I want to remind everybody, this is not 2008 anymore. This is not what's coming. This is what's happened. 98% of the Fortune 500 CPG brands in America declined last year because they continue to think the following. Watch this. You really want to get into the macro of all this? How many people here now, when they watch television, when you watch your favorite TV shows outside of live sports, now watch them when you want to watch them, not when they air? Netflix, DVR, TiVo, on demand. Raise your hands. Hi. Great, everybody. 90%. How many of you fast forward every single commercial when given the opportunity? Raise your hands. 90%. And even if the brands, my brands that stick with me here, collectively, tens, I think it's now $80 billion to make 30-second videos and then air them in between shows that you actually want to watch. Even if they're lucky enough to have you have a chance to see them because the remote control falls off the bed, even if that miracle happens, every person here, the second their favorite show goes into commercial, grabs this. And this is where the attention is. And that, at a macro, is what I'm worried about you. You are not like Sonic Restaurants or Toyota, my client, and spending it on television. You're spending it on something else. But boy, is my intuition that it's not being spent in the best place that that dollar can be spent. Or, even more scary, because you've been so successful and you were the king or queen of that town, you've gone completely complacent and aren't spending at all because word of mouth is in process, which creates the greatest vulnerability. And I promise you, in 2022 and in 2024, it's not just the kid at the table there who's going to do it better. It's also going to be the macro discussion of, you think Amazon cares about your feelings? You think Walmart spent $20 billion buying e-commerce sites so you can sell pools and spas? Like, where do you think the world's going? And so if you are not planning on retiring in the next 5 years, then you need to start really understanding what's happening, because I'm just talking about simple social media right now. How many people have an Alexa in their home? Raise your hand. How many people have an Alexa in their home? An Echo. One more time. Alexa Echo. Okay. How many people don't know what that is, actually? It's okay. I just want to get a sense. Great. Man, that guy in the back there loves retiring, loves not knowing anything. I love that dude. We just got to find him. Yeah. He's old school, huh? I like that dude. All right, anyway. Let me just give you the average day for somebody who needs to have their pool serviced in 2023. Alexa, I want my pool serviced. That's it. And I think it'd be really smart if you understood how social media worked in 2017, so that when you have to understand how Alexa's algorithm works in 2020, that you're the answer to that question, not Amazon itself or somebody else. Guys, the stakes are much higher. Please do me a favor. Please go read what happened during the Industrial Revolution and how many people went out of business out of complacency because they didn't understand that we were living through the biggest technology shift of that era. We are fully in it. We're now in it. And so over the next decade, I want to remind you that 10 years ago, everything we live on now didn't exist. 10 years ago. It's 11 for some of the websites. 10 years ago, no smartphone. 10 years ago. 10 years ago, YouTube's 11, Facebook's 11. If you think a lot's happened in the last 10 years, wait till you see what happens over the next 10 years. The stakes are enormously high. And I'm not here fear-mongering. This is just what's happening. Very honestly, the fact that you're the creme de la creme of this is, like, I assume that the majority of people in this room are like, yes, this is the opportunity. This is where I transition from a $6 million a year business to a $15 million a year business. This is when I transitioned from a $180,000 a year business to a $2.9 million business. This is pure opportunity. The problem is, and this is where everybody defaults into, they raise their, Gary, I didn't grow up with this. Me neither, Carl. I didn't grow up with this either, Carl. And guess what, Carl? You didn't grow up driving, and you figured it out. Understanding the digital landscape and what our consumers are doing on it is now oxygen for businesses. If you do not understand it, you will be destroyed. I lived this, so I gave a keynote. So I was an early investor in Uber. I gave a keynote at the limo and taxi service thing, and when they announced me, they said Uber, and a couple of them booed. Half of them, just like the Alexa thing, didn't even know it existed yet. And I said, my friends, you have to understand what this means. And where I really went with the talk, and this is where I want to go with you to bring you value versus telling you a story, here's my thesis. My thesis is very simple. It is far better to put yourself out of business than to have somebody else do it for you. And what I mean by that is, if you know your vulnerability, whatever you heard here, whatever you know, well, then you should start doing that to curtail that vulnerability. And the reason I want you to build a media brand around you is no technology, not Alexa, not Facebook, not anything that gets invented that we don't know exists now. None of that builds or beats brand, because they're not gonna ask Alexa for, let me service my pool, or who should I go with? They're gonna say, I wanna go with David, call David and fix my pool. And that's called brand. And there's a very big difference, my friends, between brand and sales. And 90% of people are in the sales business. The direct mail is a call to action, it's a sale. The Facebook stuff that you've been doing, and I did some homework, it's not working because you're selling. You're not even trying to romance a girl. You're going right in. How about making a video that's instructional, that can actually help people to know what to do? Now you've provided value. I taught people how to decant. This is very nerdy. My decanting, how to decant wine video, that was the gateway to $1.7 million worth of sales. It was very easy. I watched it. They'd go to YouTube, they'd watch the decanting video, they'd click winelibrary.com, because it was linked below, they'd go to the website, and they'd buy something. When you provide value up front, you win. I've written 4 New York Times best-selling books. The one that has sold the least is called The Thank You Economy. It's the one that matters the most. And the reason it's sold the least is because nobody wants to do the work. When people are done reading it, they put it down and say, screw that. They don't want to provide the upfront value, and all I'm trying to do in my career is provide the upfront value. Basically, my entire thesis of selling, which was the next book I wrote, Jab, 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 Right Hook, is how do I guilt you into buying my stuff? How do I provide you so much value that it would be inconceivable to you to go with somebody else? And that is what I want to challenge everybody here to think about as a thesis. And then what I want to spend the next 50 minutes, I want to start Q&A pretty quickly. So let me frame up Q&A. I'll talk a little bit, then we'll get going, and then we'll see how much Q&A. I want to go very detail-oriented. When we go into Q&A, I want to be like, hey, Gary, Sal, I own 2 stores in Minnesota, shops. We tried Facebook, it didn't work. Like, let's go very deep. Like, how do I set this Snapchat worth it? Like, go very, like, to me, this is the opportunity. This is the opportunity that this organization has created for you. This is, I think, you can go watch the first 30 minutes of this on YouTube. What BioGuard did for you is gave me enough time to do the Q&A, so please ask me your direct questions digitally. What do websites still matter? How do you think about this? Let me give you some other things. By the way, day trading attention, my most exciting meeting is with a guy by the name of Bob Pittman tomorrow, who started MTV, who owns iHeartRadio. That's why I asked about the podcast. My belief is that drive time radio is starting to get low enough in cost that it might be a deal again. So I'm not a digitalist, I'm an attentionist. I don't care where your attention is. If tomorrow I woke up and Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, and LinkedIn all disappeared, I'd be pumped. Because my contemporaries would be confused, and I would be spending every minute figuring out where everybody went. And I would know for the next 24 to 36 months, it would be underpriced, because while people debated if it's gonna stick around or matter, I'd be executing and selling stuff. So that's the punchline. Are we in a position, do you think digitally first? The answer is no for 85, 90% of this audience. If you are, for the other 15%, are you complacent in the things that got you here, which was you were just like me and you won on Google, and you won on Google AdWords, but now that's changing because that expense is going higher, and that's not branding because that's sales, it's just blue letters. Have you figured out how to make 2-minute and 3-minute videos and put them on Facebook to drive your business? Have you figured out how to get home and lifestyle Instagram accounts, paying them $100 or $200 for a shout out, which then drives conversion for you? Have you figured out the new arbitrages? And inevitably, what are you gonna then go and do about it? Because the opportunity is real. I believe for small businesses in America, you're on the clock. When I gave this talk, a very different version, in 1999, you know whose D-Day it was? It was called bookstores. They didn't know it, but they were done. And then who was on D-Day in 2009, 10, 11? Cab and limo drivers. Do you know how sad it is personally for me? As I told you, I was born in Russia. Some of my dad's friends went to LA and started, drove a cab for 7, 8, 10 years, then eventually saved up all their money and bought a couple of cars and built their business, got to that age of 55, 56, had something of a business that was worth something, they were about to sell it off, and in 24 months, Uber destroyed the value of their business by 90%. One of my dad's friends was gonna sell his business for $3.7 million, decided not to for another year or two, and sold it for $370,000. That's just real. So as we sit here today, I promise you the Marriott and the Hilton weren't sitting around 4 years ago and saying, what are our threats in the future? I promise you nobody raised their hand in that room and said, hey, wait a minute, what if somebody invents a website that is like the eBay of people's actual homes, and instead of staying in hotels, we would stay in each other's homes? How many people here have used an Airbnb or on Airbnb? Raise your hands. Raise them high, I want people to look. How many people here don't know what Airbnb is? I expect some, please raise your hands, okay. So Airbnb, it's okay, don't worry. Airbnb stands for Air, Bed, and Breakfast. It is a website where people list their homes and apartments when they're not there, and other people stay in people's homes. That's what's hurting the hotel industry. And so you sit here today, and I just want you to do good content on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, because that's where the attention is. And I'm worried if there's some kid if Sally right now is about to invent something that's gonna really hurt you. And so that's why this is what I call almost like digital fitness. There's no way to run a marathon if you haven't been on the treadmill preparing for it. The most important thing for me, for you to do Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and videos and content and podcasts, the most important thing for me is that it's getting you into the mindset of that world in case you really need it in 3 or 4 years. Right now, I'm sitting here and talking to you about the differences of you growing your business next year 4% versus growing it 18%. I don't want to come back here in 4 years and talk about the difference between you selling your business for $3.7 million or $370,000. Thank you.